In the following order: site plan, elevations, architectural details, wall sections. Staff then presents the staff report, and then we will ask for public comment. Following your presentation, the commissioners will ask questions in the same order as the presentation. Please state and spell your name clearly if you're here to speak for or against a project. Your time will be limited to 3 minutes, so take time now to summarize your comments because 3 minutes goes by very quickly. Following public comment, the applicant will have 5 minutes for rebuttal. The public hearing will then be closed. The only comments which will be allowed after the public hearing is closed will be in response to any questions from the commissioners. The commissioners will then discuss the case and will make their decision based on the city ordinance, chapter 20 of city zoning code, the design guidelines, the Secretary of Interior standards, design review comments, and the testimony given at the public hearing. The BLC can only act on items that are within our specific jurisdictional responsibility. Owners and agents are independently responsible to obtain any appropriate permits and or approvals. If you haven't already done so, please silence cell phones. And I will now introduce the other commissioners, starting from my left.
Alex Andriakos.
Good morning, I'm Eric Schiller.
Good morning, I'm Jose Jalotz.
Good morning, I'm Liz Welch.
And staff present with us today are Dennis Fernandez, Ron Vila, Beverly Jusak, and with legal, Kate Wells.
So we're going to take just a moment. Evidently, we're not able to record the meeting, so if you'll give us just a few minutes and we'll work through that technicality.
Talk amongst ourselves. The red one.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and continue the meeting. We'll go ahead and continue with the meeting. We'll keep a manual record of the minutes this morning.
So we just did the introduction, so it's now the reading of the minutes.
Oh, I guess so. I need a motion to approve the minutes from Tuesday, December 17th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Good morning, Commissioners. Dennis Fernandez, Architecture Review and Historic Preservation Manager. Just one brief announcement. The staff is beginning to coordinate a workshop to go through some of the procedures and processes with the Architecture Review Commission and the Barrio Latino Commission. We'll be reaching out to you to see some dates that might be good for everyone. Try to aim, if not in February, in early March for that. Also, I do have the list of the administrative approvals for December that we'll enter into the record. And with that, I think we'll move on to the conflicts of interest and ex parte communication.
Thank you, Dennis. At this time, if any of the commissioners have a conflict of interest as defined by state law, now would be the time to disclose it.
Yes, I have a conflict of interest with the latter case here that's under continuance, BLC 2016, and that would be that I'm an across the street neighbor.
I understand that.
So
So,
I will recuse myself from voting.
thank you, Mr. Schiller. And with that, so when this item does come up for the request for continuance, Mr. Schiller won't vote on that or in the future on any other matter. And then also, at this time, if any of the commissioners have had any ex parte communications on any matters that are scheduled for consideration today, if they were verbal communications, if you can disclose the sum and substance of the communication, who you had it with and when. And then if you've had any written communications, if you can disclose those into the record so they're part of today's hearing. Seeing none, I turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, moving on to continuations. We have one continuation this morning. It is for BLC 20-16. Property address is 1816 East 7th Avenue, and they are requesting to continue to a future public hearing. Not yet a date determined. They will be required to renotice at that time.
I move for a continuation for BLC 20-16 for the property located at 1816 East 7th Avenue, as requested by the agent, to a future public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Motion approved.
Thank you. I think we're ready for the swearing. Anyone in the audience who is going to be presenting or speaking at this morning's hearing, if you'll please arise.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are providing this morning is the truth and the whole truth?
I do.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Ron Vila. I'm staff with Historic Preservation. The first case reflected this morning is BLC 20-30 for the address of 2304 and a half East 9th Avenue. Currently, it's a vacant structure. The zoning classification is YC2. The construction of the request this morning will be approximately 1,600 square feet. It will be a two-story structure with some site improvements. This case and the next case are side by side. What I'm going to share with you is one photo essay. If we need to go back and revisit it, they're here at your convenience. But I think for the ease of the presentation, one presentation will be sufficient. Starting with a Sanborn Map from 1929, you see the north arrow, which is indicating up. Front of the parcel does face 9th Avenue. To the north you have 10th. To the west you have 23rd. And to the east you have 24th. There is an alley that runs east and west through this block. This alley has been reviewed by transportation, and it meets the criteria that the alley does not have to be improved for a single family structure at the subject site, which is here. Looking from above, and you see it in context as well. Subject site for the first case is here. The next case will be right next door to the east. There is a tree in the back. They're trying to be sensitive to the tree. They're trying to keep it so as they come in with a vehicle off the alley, the placement of the aprons are adjusted to keep the tree. And Natural Resources did look at this and is comfortable with the site plans that are presented.
Excuse me, Ron.
Yes, sir.
Could we get pictures on our monitors?
Can you get?
This picture on, oh, there it is.
Asking you shall receive. So this is looking into the parcel from 9th. This is looking to the north. This parcel will be subdivided. The first request that you see will be on the west side, which is the left, and then the other one, and then this is the tree that they're trying to keep in place. Just to look at this, the subject site for the first case, you see a little bit more of the retaining wall that buffers the western property line, and then the east elevation of the abutting structure. This is the complete subject site. This is the eastern portion and the non-contributing structure that sits abutting of that property line. On the northern block face of 9th Avenue, this is the abutting structure to the west. Subject site is over here. What's important to look at this as well is the setbacks from the front property line. Look at the materials of the walkways and then the elevation from grade, so that the request in front of you this morning is consistent with the block face. This is directly across the street. I wanted to share with you, just looking down the street, with all urban environments, there's challenges for parking. There is street parking on 9th Avenue. This is looking towards the east. And then turn around to the west. Subject site is over here. This is the alley looking from 23rd back into, this is looking to the east. Subject site is back here. With all urban environments, vehicular access is a challenge as well. This is part of the original grid. This is how it was platted out, so they do have 10 foot in between, and transportation has looked at it. This is looking from 23rd back into the alley, and this is looking from the alley back towards 23rd. As you get into the alley a little bit more, and then the termination of the alley on 24th. At this time, I'm going to have the agent, Mr. Dobson, address the board, and then I'll come back with my conclusion.
Good morning, William Dobson. I have been sworn in, and I'm the architect of the project. I will show first the site plan.
I got you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So as you can see here, to the left is the existing house, one-story house, and then the property lines here. The house is set back even with the adjacent structure, which is here. I have 10-foot one from the property line to the porch, and then I have 18-foot to the actual house, and I'm using the same setbacks for both my front porch and the main part of the house. The structure is a raised foundation with piers, so I've managed to set the porch at the same height as the adjacent structure, but in my case I've got 3 steps up to the porch, so that I've got a small little grassy area in the front. We're proposing a picket fence which is 42 inches high around the front yard, and then along the side we're going to maintain a wooden fence on that side, and on this side is the other structure that I'll show you in a moment with no fence in between. On the rear of the property we have a small deck which exits out of the kitchen and then into a single car parking space which is 18 feet deep, and then I have a 24-foot backup space if you include this point here back to the back of the alley. So we've got approval from transportation that that's enough backup space for the car. Here's where the tree is located, and we've got our protective radius there. It might be interesting to note that in Ybor there were 2-story shotguns at one point. I don't think there are very many left, but this happens to be one that was actually on the west side of 22nd Street, which is some precedent for the 2-story house that I'm proposing. But also right across the street, there are 2 frame vernacular shotgun houses with the picket fence and very simple frame structure, porches, metal roofs, obviously wood siding. These are in some way a twin. as you can see, the other house to the east of it. So they're basically identical homes, one-story frame. And just to show you both projects together, I'm proposing a two-story, kind of a twin. There's some variations in the detailing. This is the project I'm discussing now, which is the first 2304 and a half. Can I make the rest of the tape? So back again to the site plan. Obviously, the picket fence here, very simple, white picket fence, which is going to be around the front part of the house, and then there's a board-on-board fence, which is going to be on the west side of the house. On my elevations front, you can see I've used hardy plank siding, which is a 6-inch exposure siding. This is a peaked front porch, which is extended onto the main house. So this is the peak of the house behind. This is the porch itself. And then I have simple horizontal railings to give it a little twist. But these are all one by one painted wood railings. All of the columns are just simple straight columns with a frieze board separating the first and the second level. I have French doors with single pane glass on the front, and then I also have the 2/1 double hung windows. As you'll notice, I've created a lot of window openings in the house, which I think is very, very common in Ybor. In all the historic buildings, there were lots of windows, and mostly single windows in the frame vernacular. We're using 5B crimp for the roofing, and then there's a small porch with an overhang on the rear. I've got wooden steps exposed here with exposed stringers, and then I'm using the brick piers exposed with a foundation enclosure. Very simple foundation enclosure, which I can show you here. It's basically 2x2s with a 2x4 frame with a 1.5-inch gap between each board. This is also the gable end, which is the vented area, which is also 2x2s. And then on the front, I'm using smooth, hardy shingles there. The overhang is 1 foot, and most of the historic homes that had this high pitch did not have the exposed rafter tails, so I'm using an enclosed fascia on all the overhangs. This is the railing detail. It's a 3-foot high railing with the closely spaced horizontal members there. I wanted to focus on the windows, if I could, for just a few moments, because what I'm proposing has this profile. I've taken this from a local manufacturer that sells the windows, and this is actually an aluminum window. But I think the case is that because we're using some of the details that are very similar to the historic structures, we're using a full mutton for the 2/1, and we're also using a deep set frame, which you've probably seen this before. It's a proprietary detail, and this is actually a flashing detail which is set into the siding, or excuse me, set into the frame. And what that does is that gives us the option of,
I got it.
So basically what happens with this is attached to the framing of the house. On top of that is where the siding goes, and then on top of that is where the trim goes. So we're getting a recess. The window is actually set back in here. So by the time you have the trim added to this, what they call deco flash, you've got a 2-inch reveal from the face of the window to the outside of the trim. And I think that that's the main case in most of the historic structures, is that you have a deeper set window. We're proposing to use a white aluminum window. This is the only sample I could obtain, which is a dark bronze. But the case here is that this face of the window here, which is the upper portion of the double hung window, is set so that, let me give you this detail as well. I don't know if you can see that from there. But as you can see, here's the trim board, which is a 5-quarter trim board. These little ridges here are the deco flash exposed. So you can see that we have a 2-inch dimension from the face of the trim back to the face of the upper portion, the upper sash. And then, of course, this is the lower sash. There's also a 5-quarter sill across the bottom of the window. And as you can see, the trims meet the top of the sill here without any kind of a freeze board below it. The door itself is a Plas-Pro wood grain door in a natural finish, and that will be for the upstairs porch as well as the first floor entry door. This would be the light fixture, which is mounted right over the entry door. And then we have the wall section. Sorry about that. Here's the wall section. So not only am I showing here just the porch itself, which you can see is an 8-foot deep porch. On the ground level, we're using the 1x4 tongue and groove pine. And then on the upper level, we're using a 2x6 pressure treated decking with a 1/4-inch gap. This is the horizontal configuration of the railings beyond. And as you can see, the 12-inch overhang on the gable end is an exposed beadboard for the soffit. And then also, this is the location of the ceiling of the porch. And we're using the beadboard side of plywood facing down, so you've got that detail. Here's just a section which shows you that the crown of the road here is more than 2 feet lower than the actual porch. There's a real low slope to this property, so there's not much elevation change. And we have the 3 steps up to a 2-foot high porch. The brick piers here. The color palette that we're using is a tan with a white trim. So all of the hardy will be the tan color and all the trims will be the white trims. This is a smooth hardy finish. And then this is an example of the 5B crimp roofing. These are photos of the brick. The colors didn't come out quite well. But we've got basically just a rough-faced red brick for the piers. The door hardware is a black as well as the light fixture. I think that's over my time, so are there any questions?
Good morning, Commissioners. Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. And going through the staff's finding that this application is consistent with the Ybor City Design Guidelines. On page 3 of your staff report, there's 7 criteria when we look at new construction within the Ybor City boundaries. It touches upon height and width, facade width, setback, spacing, alignment, similarity in details of materials, and building form. So this request does touch upon all those are inconsistent. In reviewing this request with the applicant, staff had some additional conditions. Initially, when this project came in, it had exposed rafter tails and these very modest 2-story vernacular shotgun houses with minimal overhangs, 8 to 12-inch overhangs, and with a 12-12 pitch roof. The examples that we have, and I'll share some with you, don't express the exposed rafter tails. And then on the front gable, he had some knee brackets as well. So the introduction of the brackets were not needed and the exposed rafter tails. The material from the street up the walkway to the porch originally was indicated as brick. Through our research as well, concrete would have been the choice, and I'm going to share you what this block has. So he's consistent with the block on 9th Avenue. And then with the deco flashing, we had asked him to bring that. It's a product that we don't see a lot of times at the public hearing. But with the installation and the reveal that this product does allow, the success of the installation of the window can be achieved with this product. Just going to share with you here the block. This is going from 23rd down 9th to the east. Over here, the transition from the sidewalk to the front stoop is concrete. As you get a little farther down into the block, this one's concrete as well. They've been painted, but these are period homes illustrating the intention of the construction type, concrete. This is another house, contributing structure that shows that same relationship. And to conclude with these last two down here. So we want a consistency. Within the area, this is a very modest, this is a one-story home, same style, but you see the 12-12 pitch with the minimal overhangs and no exposed rafter tails or knee brackets. And this one as well. So sometimes when the roof pitch did come down, and it was more of a 412 pitch, you have the exposed rafter tails. But the relationship with the roof pitch to the exposed tails is prevalent here. So that concludes my portion, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Oh, you have a question for Ron?
Yeah, I have a question for Ron. If you could just, the guidelines do allow for aluminum windows for new construction in residential, as long as we're satisfied with their placement within the building plan?
For new construction, aluminum and vinyl have been reviewed and approved. I think the success is in the installation.
Okay.
A lot of times with the new construction, they're flat, how they've been presented, and that's not consistent with our criteria. So with this application here, we've seen it in the field, but I wanted him to express a little more detail for you today.
Okay. And another question, so just for clarity, you think it'd be more consistent if this project and perhaps the next one had a concrete stoop as opposed to the wooden steps that they've shown?
The walkways traditionally, the sidewalks, the walkways, and the drive aisles were usually concrete. Mm-hmm. Then as materials became more prevalent, concrete, the price came down, then the stoops were concrete, but originally they were wood. So I think he could go either way on the steps to the front porch.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ron. And now we will open the floor to any public comments for the project. Mr. Ron? We'll open questions in a second. Seeing no one's come forward to speak for or against, we will now have the commissioners ask questions, starting with Alex over to my left here.
I have no questions.
I'm assuming this is a single-family house?
Yes, sir. Single family,
That was my question.
I have just a couple questions. What is the material of the railing on the second floor?
The railing is a wood. It's a pressure-treated wood. The top is a 2x4, remember? And then all the pickets are 2x2 painted wood, pressure-treated wood.
On the railing, okay.
On the railings as well,
It wasn't clear
yep.
from the drawings. And then also, I apologize if you did show it to us, but did we see a rear elevation for the house?
There is one on the sheet. Yeah, I can
Okay,
show
if
it
I
to you
could just
again.
Take a look at it
Uh-huh.
again. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's here. There's that little overhang over the back door. Yep, but that's the rear.
All right, thank you.
Uh-huh.
No more questions.
And then just to confirm, for the windows, for the smaller windows, I'm assuming it's the sort of same detail, it's just a smaller window in that case, on the side elevations that we see?
Yes, actually, the only one that's smaller in all cases is in the bathroom.
Uh-huh.
So it's basically just the top half proportion of the double hung window, but it is a fixed window. It has the same detailing, the same recess, yes.
Just confirming, and then, I don't think I saw it on the site plan, but the AC unit, is that just located in the rear?
Okay, good point, yep. This is, I'm not sure that you can see it, but it's actually almost 5 feet from the property line to the condenser unit, and it is in the back, set below the back porch, so it's not too obtrusive.
Okay, fantastic, thank you.
Okay.
Need to set up a motion. Oh, actually,
If those are all the questions, the applicant has 5 minutes for rebuttal. In the
Yeah.
event that there's anything else that Mr. Dobson would like to include into the record.
The application that we've made is for final approval, as opposed to just preliminary, so we would request final on this.
Any discussion?
First, you have to close the public hearing.
oh, yes, okay, so now we will close the public hearing, and then we can discuss the case. Anything you'd like to?
Well, just commenting on the stoop, I understand that both are appropriate, the wooden steps that are being, that we're asked to consider, and the concrete. I personally do think, given the street views that we saw, and given the prominence of the house and the fact that it's 2 stories, a concrete stoop seems to be more in keeping with the overall neighborhood, but I don't feel that strongly about it unless other commissions do.
Yeah, I think, as Ron pointed out, it could go either way, so.
Okay.
I don't fight so strongly about it.
When they rebuild it, it'll be concrete.
When you rebuild it, well, sure. Yeah. Other than that, we can make a motion.
I'll make a motion.
All right.
This motion is for final approval, and I move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing in DLC 20-30 for the property located at 2304 1/2 East 9th Avenue in Ybor City, because based on the finding of fact, the proposed project is consistent with the Ybor City design guidelines of the City of Tampa for the following reasons, and it meets all the local criteria, and this final approval will be without conditions.
Have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
What was the other one?
Any opposed?
Any opposed? Yes.
You're in a good side.
It's been a while. Seeing no one's opposed, motion passes.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ron Vila, I'm staff with Historic Preservation. The next case is BLC 20-31. This is for the address of 2306 East 9th Avenue. This is also on a vacant parcel. Zoning classification is YC2. The request is for new construction for single-family residential and with some site improvements. We are going to forego the photo presentation at this time. I'm going to have the agent address the board.
Okay, so this is the site directly to the east of the original, just simply approved project. This is 2306, and I've provided you here on the site plan with the same kind of setbacks that relates to the house, the new house next door, as well as the house further to the west. The existing house to the east is a non-contributing structure and set back in an inappropriate way from relationship to the other homes on that side of the street. So all the other houses, as you move past this non-contributing structure, are essentially the same setback, within inches of the 18 feet that we're providing here, and the 10 foot on the front for the porch as well. Really, there's no difference in the site layout that you just saw. However, we are providing a board-on-board fence, which begins back at the face of the home here, all the way back to the back of the property to create privacy between the two homes. We've got the picket fence in the front yard. This also has a one-car space in the back, tree to the left, and the porch in the rear. And just to circumvent that other question from last time, this is the location of the condenser unit in this property as well. So it's kind of hidden behind the corner of the house. It is a single-family house, and I will move to the boards. We're using the same window detailing, obviously. The main change in the design of the house relates to the front of the home. The plan and the other details are very similar to the first project. But in this case, we're providing a shed roof, kind of a porch as opposed to the gable end, to give it some variety. We've also changed the railing in this case to be vertical pickets, but all this is a wood, painted wood. There really are no other differences other than the color. Which in this case is it's called Dutch Tile Blue from Sherwin-Williams, and it has a white trim for all the trims. The same red brick is being used. Same hardy plank, smooth finish, same 5E crimp metal roofing. And again, the only real difference in the structure is the way that we've designed the shed roof of the porch, which also has a 5E crimp roof. And you can see the vertical pickets beyond, in this case, all painted wood. The porch is also framed with the 1x4 tongue and groove pine. And then we have the 2x6 pressure treated deck on the second floor. Simple painted wood columns, all white. And you see up here the hardy plank siding. This also is raised up 2 feet from the property, like the previous project. And I guess you've already seen the window detail, so I won't go over that in any more detail. But these are the up-close details. We have the vertical pickets here on this railing as opposed to the horizontal. The same kind of gable vent, which is above the shed porch roof, and then 12-inch overhangs. And then we have the same kind of foundation enclosure with the 2x2s and then the 2x4 surrounding the frame with the brick piers. This is the light fixture, which we're using on the other house as well. Ron?
That concludes your presentation. Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation, that this application is consistent with the Ybor City Design Guidelines with the plans that we reviewed on January 10th, 2020. And looking through our guidelines, the 7 criteria that are bolded on page 3 on your staff report, he addresses all of those concerns. Starting with a 25-foot wide lot, which YC2 allows for construction, and 95-foot deep. The simplicity of this project is consistent with the research that we've done in the past. At times, people try to probably put too much into this parcel, and this really complements the intention of the early structures in the 1900s in Ybor City. With that said, that this application is consistent, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Take a run, and then we'll once again open up the floor for any public comment, if there's anyone to speak for or against. Seeing no one's coming forward, we'll close the public comment, and then commissioners can ask any questions. This time, let's start on my right.
I am good.
I just have a couple of questions for the applicant. One is regarding the porch on the front on the second floor. On the past project that we saw, you had closed it off and there was an attic. Is that the same condition on this one, or is it open?
Good question. It is not open. Well, I take it back. It's a shed roof, so the detail is somewhat different.
Yeah, it seems like it might be more appropriate to have it open.
Well, the framing is.
Okay.
So I don't know if you can tell from here, but the darker shaded area is the plywood.
Okay.
And we're exposing the beadboard
Perfect.
to that. So this is all open underneath.
Great.
That dark line is just to show you that that's an
Yeah.
opening, but yes. the beadboard's exposed at that angle.
Yeah, and I think that is more appropriate. It would give you some variety from the one next door, and it's a shallower pitch. And then the only other comment, I just have wondered, you mentioned that you're doing a wood fence that's going to turn and meet the face of the property, at least on one side or perhaps both sides. I know you have a window there. I'm just wondering if you have the ability to offset the fence that you're proposing a little bit from the face. I find that fences, if they're just not exactly flush with the front of the property, is a more historic condition.
So you're saying instead of across here, move it back a little bit?
Yeah, I know you have a window there, but I'm just wondering if you have enough room just to recess it a little bit.
Oh, I think so. I think
Okay.
that'd be all right, yeah.
Good.
And then just, we'll bring the picket fence up to the face of that. But we don't have a fence on this
Oh,
side
okay.
between the two houses.
Yeah. I think it's a more historically accurate way to have a fence hit the corner of a building.
So in fact, if you're looking at the elevation, that window is really close.
Yeah,
But I guess we could set it in between.
yeah. I mean, even inches achieves the goal. Thank you.
Sure.
I have a question. There is a small slope on that lot. Did you mention that?
According to the survey, I didn't see that it was a significant slope, but again, we're dealing with a cross-cut section where there are no curbs in this location. I think the real slope is actually farther to the west where that little retaining wall is in the existing house. But once you get to these properties, they're pretty level.
What I'm driving at is the finished height of the floors. Are they going to match in both houses, or are they going to be an inch or two off?
They're going to be relative to the property. They're going to be 2 feet from the grade. So if the grade is down, it'll still be 2 feet from there and 2 feet from here.
I see.
All the porches along that street are 3 to 4 steps up. So they're not all exactly, at the same height. If you struck a string across that, they do follow the contours of the property.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to do that. Yeah, thank you.
I have no questions.
I have no further questions as well. So if anything, now we'll close the,
If you'll give the applicant
Question
5
for-
minutes before you close the public hearing, if there's anything else that he
For-
wants to put into the record.
No other comments. Thank you for your time, and we would appreciate final approval.
all right. We can open up for us to discuss the
You want
case.
to close the public hearing?
I'll close the public hearing and we'll open it up for us to discuss the case.
I think it's a terrific presentation, very consistent with the project we just approved, and I'd be ready to make a final approval with the only condition being the offset of the fence as we discussed.
I think that's a nice touch.
Okay.
Sure.
Any other comments?
No.
Move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing in BLC 20-31 for the property located at 2306 East 9th Avenue, with the following conditions: that the applicant offset the proposed wooden fence as discussed from the corner of the proposed structure as discussed at the public hearing, because based upon the findings of fact, the project is consistent with the Ybor City Design Guidelines of the City of Tampa for the following reasons: the scale, materials, site placement are all consistent with the patterns found in the historic district.
And just make sure so that the applicant understand the conditions of the final approval that's been presented. All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
We didn't have a second.
Oh, sorry. I knew it was- sorry.
I'll second
Yeah,
it.
second, okay. Then all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you. And then with that, I believe there are no more cases to discuss. That's the final one, and we will close the hearing on January 28th, 2020. Thank you.
Good job.